Hi, DC, Artsy, and creative community. I am Arts Commissioner Jose Alberto Ucle, and
I'm Tom Noll, artist and children's book writer.
We are so thrilled and we are so thankful to our wonderful Mayor Muriel Bowser, and to the incredible Angie M. Gates, Director of Octofome, and for this wonderful opportunity to do this 202 Creates Masterclass. So you are going to hear all about us. Welcome to our artsy, crafty home, and we're glad to be here. And my first question will be for Tom. Tom, what brought you to Washington, D.C., and what do you love about this city?
Fascinated with the architecture, everything there is to do, the theater, the museums and things like that. I came here 30 years ago. I was in Manassas for about 15 years before I moved to D.C. officially about 16 years ago. And I've been here ever since.
Where are you originally from?
I'm from Ohio, southeastern Ohio, about 30 miles outside of Columbus.
Well, in my case, actually, both Tom and I have been here for over 30 plus years, and we love this city. I am originally from San Pedro Sula, Honduras, and I actually came to go to a college in Indiana, Goshen College. And when I was there, I came to visit on a spring break, Washington, D.C., and to my amazement, and still is one of my favorite times in Washington, it was during the Cherry Blossom Festival. And I fell in love with the city, and I made a promise to myself then that I would move here and try to pursue a career in Washington, D.C., because I found it amazing. Like Tom said, the architecture is great, the museums, the art and culture. And when the chance came that I was graduating, American University was offering their inaugural, their first program, Masters in Public Relations. So I said, I am coming to Washington, D.C., and have not regretted it at all. And when it comes to us, we will stay here until our last day. We love this city. We love the people. We love the creative energy. So we're glad to be here. It is wonderful. And thank you for the magic you bring to all of us and visitors. Tom, let me start with you first. I know you share a passion for many art forms. You actually have been called a multidisciplinary artist. And actually, to clarify, Tom and I have been creative partners for about 16 years. So we are a couple, and we do a lot of things and support the arts in Washington, D.C. quite often. So I thought I would let you know that. So I know the fountain of creativity that Tom is. But I want Tom to tell us in first place about your award-winning children's books. Tell us a little bit about it, what their names are, and how did you get the inspiration?
The award-winning children's books are called Trash to Treasure Series, Recycling Creatively with LT. And the first one's called The Bicycle Fence. And the second one is Selling Eggs. And those came about, I had a fence in Manassas for years, which I had almost 30 bicycles. I was always in the arts and always creating something. In Manassas, I had an acre lot, and there was not a blade of grass, but it was all sculptures and garden and landscaping and my art. And I sold it right out of the yard and things like that. When I was little, I was always creating things. And, I was lucky enough to live on near my grandmother's farm where there was a shop. And that means all kinds of tools and welding and everything. So I was always building, creating something. My grandmother was the best at, supporting my art. If I put it in her flower bed, it usually stayed. Anywhere else, it was, usually God with my farmer father. But the children's books are all about recycling for kids, to teaching them a fun way of recycling. The first book is about he outgrows his bicycle and he needs a new bicycle. So he gets some bicycles from the junkyard. And then after he makes a new bicycle with all the parts, he takes and makes a fence out of the leftover bicycles to keep his sister in. And the second one, in selling eggs, he ends up with raising chickens, which he thinks he's getting chickens and have fresh eggs and be able to make some money. But when the chicks arrive, he has to find ways to house them. So he uses a feather boa on the end of a light. He takes his sister's dollhouse and puts them in that for a few weeks. And then they end up with bird cages, and he rides through town and he sells bicycle fresh eggs in the story there. But he's always taking something he has right around the house and making it into something else. And that's kind of what I teach the kids in my stories, is kind of recycling, but in a fun and different avant-garde way.
Let me ask you, what was and still sometimes is probably your biggest challenge in writing children's books?
Biggest challenge of writing children's books is I'm ADD and dyslexic. So I learned a little bit differently. I got to lab school. One of the biggest things for me was Brain Gym. A friend of mine introduced me to that. I took quite a few Brain Gym courses and learned the exercises and things like that, which really helped me a lot. That wasn't until I was about 50 and 55. Thinking I would never be able to write a children's book. I was always fascinated. My grandmother always told me stories, and I loved, if I listen to something, I can remember it. But if I have to read it, it's not going to compute with my little brain. So it's like, so I sit there and say, okay, let me learn that. And once I learn it, then it's like, okay. And a lot of the stories, my stories are like true stories about when I was growing up. So that type of thing. Yes.
Thank you. And indeed, you continue writing other children's books, and we are so very proud of you. You did mention the bicycle fence. And for our viewers who might not know, you are indeed very popular here in the Bloomingdale neighborhood, which is on Ward 5, because when you moved here, you created what is now known and popular for taking pictures, the white bicycle fence art installation, which is in our pocket park. It's a corner park that it is on the intersection of Rhode Island Avenue, First Street, and T Street Northwest. So tell us, you decorated for holidays. What inspired that part, and how did you get to create this that now is something that both visitors and the neighbors look forward to seeing every holiday season?
One of the things that inspired me, my mother, growing up, we lived 2 miles outside of town, and we lived on a little hill, and she was a frustrated artist. So we would come home and she would have the porch decorated, and she'd actually paint the sliding doors with paint, and, just for, happy birthday, for the seasons, for different things. And what joy it brought. People would drive from town just to see, what my mother had done on the porch and on the door and things like that. There was one when I got in high school. I was old enough to build things. So I was able to stay at home a few days, and we built wood cutouts for the yard. We did Snoopy one year and Charlie Brown and all that. And the next year, that went over so well that we did all the cutouts out of plywood, Winnie the Pooh. And I saw what joy that brought to people. So when I was in Manassas, I had my bicycle fence there, and I decorated it for just any reason at all. I had 30 bicycles there. So 6 bicycles to decorate is nothing compared to 30. I think that the idea of the joy of doing that and the smiles that people, that I get. Manassas, one of the letters I got in the mail one time was a lady said, "I hope for a red light at your house so I can see what you're up to in your yard." And, for somebody in Northern Virginia to say they hope to get a red light at your house, that's quite a feat. When I saw the park, 16 years ago, I left the house and I decided that I was going to create a park. So I asked all the houses around there and all the businesses that were there. There was only one restaurant at the time, 2 restaurants at the time. And I asked them, if they thought, if that was all right that I, worked in the park and added some plants and, added some bushes and things like that. And I did that. And then 2 years later, I created the park with the rocks and the plants and stuff. And then I still decorated the park with the things that I had, but I didn't put the bicycles in for 2 years. Once I got that, and then I thought, okay, well, it's Easter time, and the decorations are going to show up better for the bicycles. So I said, I'm going to put the bicycles up. They thought that was a fun idea. And since then, it's always remained. And now that I can be more creative, and there's only 6 bicycles, so anything can inspire me. Lately, it's been if I see the kids, if I see a children's book about frogs, or, I see a stuffed animal and then I see a flag, it's like, okay, that's all I need is those 2 things. And then I'll find some green things and some whirligigs and add to it. And what this last couple of years during the pandemic, I've been able to get like children's books about frogs, not only just my books, but children's books about frogs and put it in when there's frogs, or the ladybugs, and I'll do a ladybug books in there, or the butterflies, and I'll do butterfly books there. And also I'll decorate for all the holidays, the holidays that there are. So it's basically to bring joy, and people when they get off the bus, just see their face, and it's like so it's just to bring joy to people.
Thank you, Tom. And indeed, you do bring a lot of joy to people. And one fact that probably people are not aware, you do this out of the kindness of your heart, and actually from your own finances, from the upkeep that you do in the park and putting new plants where the bicycle fence art installation is, and also in buying, creating the decorations, because you're very resourceful. So the neighborhood, and we are all very grateful.
Why don't you tell us about your job here in DC?
Okay. I have been with the U.S. Department of Transportation at the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, which abbreviation is NHTSA, for about 21 years. I feel like one of the luckiest persons alive, because not only do I have a job that makes me happy, because at NHTSA, our main mission is to save lives. Our areas of expertise and that we work with would be traffic safety, making sure that people buckle up, that children are in the correct child safety seat in the back seat, that people do not drive drunk, drugged, distracted, that we make sure that the elderly are taken care of. We deal with school buses. And one thing that touches everybody's lives is that NHTSA is the agency that oversees recalls. When there's a defect with your car, we make sure that we work with the manufacturer, so like that you can get those recalls repaired. So to be doing that as the Hispanic spokesperson, and I also work as the liaison with different organizations and agencies in creating some of the materials. I had the great pleasure last year to help create the first ever NHTSA en Español website, where a lot of the materials we offer to the American community in English is available in Spanish. So it's quite a thrill. And then I am blessed to also be part of the DC Commission on the Arts and Humanities.
Why don't you talk about being a part of the art community and arts and humanities of DC?
It's one of my biggest thrills. I actually must acknowledge, like you, from an early age, my background is Latino, obviously, but I am part Italian with a little French thrown in there, but my mother is the Italian part. So I honestly grew listening to opera music, to ballet, to different kinds of classical music. My mother is an avid reader. We used to go to shows, watch the movies. She loves arts, visual arts, painting, sculptures. So, and my grandmother, my Italian grandmother, Emma, from an early age, we used to have these wonderful talks about art and going to the little museums we had in my city. So I was very blessed being in Washington, D.C. I was a judge for the Helen Hayes Awards, which is part of Theater Washington, an organization I admire a lot. It's a little similar to the Tonys on Broadway. And what it is you go to plays, like hundreds of plays a year, and you get to give them grades on how effective the play was. So that connected us to a lot of the theaters that now we're friends with and that we know, and that you go with me and you were very supportive. So that was the first in to eventually being nominated and appointed to be a commissioner for Ward 5, my ward, the DC Commission on Arts and Humanities. And I have been blessed that Mayor Bowser has been kind enough to appoint me twice. So I am actually going on 9 years being on the DC Commission on Arts and Humanities. And I am so very proud of the job, my fellow commissioners, the leadership that we have had, and the amazing dedicated staff every day in helping do grants for diverse arts organizations, visual art, performing arts, arts education, public art, which I love. So it's a joy. I'm blessed. I help save lives and I help bring Artsy joy, because I am a firm believer that arts, humanities, culture elevates us and gives us a way better life and hope for the future for all of us. Now, Tom, tell me, I hear also, or I know, you're also a sculptor. So tell us a little bit about your sculptures and what do they entail?
The sculptures I do, the latest sculptures that I do are rebar and stone sculptures. Basically, I was in Ohio. I built them in Ohio when I was there. And I go back every once in a while. My dad had I took some of the tools and some of the stuff from the shop. And a lot of it's out of rebar, recycled rebar, where it got rusty, so they can't use it for holding cement together. So I've taken it and designed it and twisted it and bent it and all this and that. Some of them I leave rusty, some of them I paint. And then I drill them into a sandstone, a base, which is like a foundation stone back there in Ohio, where I found it of old farmhouses and buildings and stuff. So that's the base that I use for some of the sculptures that I've done lately. Before that, I was doing painted furniture for kids and adults with animals carved out on the back of it. So, yes.
Is there a particular show that you did, that you do, that you have enjoyed exhibiting in, and why?
If you're an artist of any caliber, even just starting out, I recommend getting involved with Artomatic. It was around for years and years and years. We're still pushing it. It's harder to get around now because basically they had taken old buildings, not old buildings, but newer old buildings in DC when the real estate wasn't as hot as it is. and they could come in there for 4 or 5 months. Artists could come in and have a space. And sometimes there'd be up to 500 to even 1,000 artists. They'd have like 800 feet of space, and they could make a room out of it and display their art. The last ones have not been in DC. They've been in Maryland, Virginia, Crystal City. And the biggest thing is being around that many other artists of just all different kinds of calibers. I mean, you can't imagine, from visual art to paintings to, actually even theater and singing, dancing, I think not fire breathing, but when they were doing the tossing the fire dance on the yard at one of the places. There's all just all different kinds of things, but the camaraderie of meeting other artists and just having that. One of the things you did was you ended up volunteering like 10 sections of time while they were open. And then you were either walking around or, greeting people, different things like that. And you got to meet with these other artists that you were working, that were there. You'd meet them and you'd meet other artists that were there, and you'd have different events and stuff and different get-togethers. And it was just amazing to hear everybody's story. And, yes. So there, Artomatic.
And I think everybody can get to see your sculptures in some people's homes and also around our neighborhood. You are retired, but you're still creating and helping spread the good word. So we are so thankful for that. A question that people ask us quite often is, why are you called the Artsy Fashion Peacocks? And if I may say, it is because we, as a couple, tend to attend a lot of events in town, small, large. Washington has an amazing network. It's a big village of art makers and art advocates and art supporters. So there's a lot of theater going on. There's a lot of art exhibits. There's so many different kind of musical events, festivals that we love. So we tend to go, and we have been indirectly called connectors of people, and that we bring joy. And like, we like to connect this person from like the in series to somebody else in a bigger organization or somebody at the National Theater. So that's part of the magic that we bring as a couple. But the Artsy Fashion Peacocks comes with a little bit of a story that you helped create, which is a fantastic 12 by 16 walk-in closet, the Peacock closet. So tell us how it came to be, and how you are indeed a stylist, a decorator. So your capacities are endless. I mean, besides the artsy home that we live in, because we both are collectors, period. There's a lot. This is a museum, and people always love looking at all the furnishings and accessories and paintings that we have. So tell us about that.
Well, one of the things is when I was younger, I was lucky enough to be in display at a store called Lazarus, which is a downtown department store in Columbus, Ohio. I was able to get into the display department, and from then on, the creativity just never stopped. There were 3 years there where I did the windows, and we had 68 windows that had to be changed every 2 weeks. And each window was a different department. And so just having, experimenting all the time. And, there were a lot of mistakes, but you learn from your mistakes. And when you grow and learn from your mistakes, there's just that aspect of it. There was also the fashion. I was always into, fashion and something different. At the time, I was always, back in the 70s, 80s, they didn't have as much fashion is what they do for men. So you went to the thrift stores, and you went to, Salvation Army and tried to find a jacket and maybe paint on it or do something different to it. One of the crazy things is when you started, when we started going to the theater, because you, the Helen Hayes Awards. When you started doing the Helen Hayes Awards, we started going to the theater, and sometimes we were going to 80 to 120 shows a year. And you wanted something different to wear all the time. So I had to come up with some ideas. And when we first started, there was kind of plain, suits, and we could, get some fun shirts and stuff. But then it was like we'd add pins and stuff to it, or different handkerchiefs and things like that. And then we got to finding, the different jackets. We went to New York, I think a couple of years, and we found this little store, and it had a few of these fun jackets in it. And we would go then a couple of times a year to get more jackets and more jackets. And the next thing you know, you have your closet full, I have my closet full, and the middle room was full of different things. So we were running back and forth. And when we go, a lot of it too is when we go out, it's like we try to match, like we're, if there's a jacket that is, say it has a pattern in red and blue, we'll buy it in red and blue. Or there might be something that we'll just buy, I got a gold jacket, I'll buy a gold jacket. And it may be 5 years from now when we'll wear that jacket, or, we'll buy the jacket and we put them together. And lately during the pandemic, right before the pandemic, I started really getting a little crazy. It was always, more traditional with the jackets and the shirts, and, a plain shirt with a jacket. And now it's like pattern on top of pattern on top of pattern, and just getting really outrageously fun with it, and enjoying the fashion. I also do a lot of the steampunk festivals, which I enjoy doing. So I make these crazy wild hats, and even set it way over the top for that. But the closet came about was it's like, you would go to your room, I would go to one end of the house, the other end of the house, and try to get ready. And I finally said, let's just clear it out. And what it is I had to put extra supports because the jackets were so heavy and the pants and stuff that I put a 2x6 on the bottom and a 2x6 on the top. And we went a 10-foot ceiling there. So I reinforced it with a 6x6 with a hole drilled through it. And that could balance out the weight. So the boards were not going to come through in the living room downstairs. And now it's jam-packed and there's nowhere else to go.
So in other words, we have an incredible collection. We are indeed collectors. We like things that are different, I think, is our artsy side. We truly do both enjoy going out to shows, to openings. We also do a lot of philanthropic events. We have been blessed that we are surrounded by what we call a family of the heart, a family you choose besides your blood family, because we admire and respect all these people who are, again, art makers, art supporters, who are philanthropists, who help so many organizations. So we do have throughout the year a jam-packed schedule, and they always find us joyful to be around. So I figure our attire has been a way of conveying our thank you, our way of saying we appreciate your hard work. It's our way of honoring the creative forces behind where we go, and also the people who are our hosts. We are incredibly lucky to be included in so many things, and then learn and meet other artsy, creative people that we also try to connect. So it's quite a blessing. And also, I would love to mention this, in our home, there is art everywhere, like I said. But one of the things that Tom and I are the most proud of is on our second floor, there's an entire, from one side to the other side of the house, a gallery that is full of very colorful, happy art. And I'm proud to say that about 65% of it is by local DC artists and or people in the Metro DC area. So we love that. And in closing, the part about our fashion sense, we do believe that fashion is an art, and we are lucky to be connected. And I'm a great shopper, so we're able to buy things at great prices all around, and we have incredible friends at different places. And I want to give a shout out to our friend Ian Williams, who does DC Fashion Week. It's another creative force in town, because they bring fashion to DC and so many local artists. We're so blessed to have such a fountain of creativity. Now, Tom, there's another magic thing you do, which we have them around the home and you donate them for events. You do what is called fairy boxes. Very quickly, can you tell us what the fairy boxes are about and what basic materials do you use that you find in consignment shops or secondhand shops?
The fairy boxes started, they're just kind of, well, they're fairy boxes, but going into magical boxes than just any kind of box, because they start out with the fairies. I have a tendency to love fairies, like little doll fairies and things like that. So, and I have like 5 or 6 friends that really get into fairies. So I had an idea. I was at a thrift store, and a couple of years ago, I started collecting boxes. And well, when I mean a box, I mean like a jewelry box, any kind of a square box at all. Basically, a lot of 90% are jewelry boxes and old clocks. And then I'll take the fairies or an item and stick it in the box. So instead of having a knickknack on the shelf, I'm actually making boxes to go on the wall to store the little knickknacks. And that I'm just building. I've just finished my garage, and I'm making a studio to create those again. And a lot of it for me, where art was, for me, art and being in creating art was always just about doing it. I mean, I learned how to do it, see how it was done. I was lucky enough that when I was in Manassas, Easter Market was my best place. I actually sold furniture there, kids painted furniture for years, for almost 3 years. And then I got into making Southwest baskets, and I would weave bones and leather and all kinds of reeds when I was doing basket weaving class. A lot of it is just getting out there and taking a passion for something and really just getting into it. And I want to do that. And I never said I couldn't do it. I mean, I just, those words were not in there. If I took a passion to do something, it was like I was going to do it. And if it didn't sell, I gave it to people. And that's the whole thing for me, is like collecting this stuff, doing this stuff. And if my art doesn't sell that much, I was doing jewelry for a while. And if it didn't sell that well, then I just gave it away. It was just, I had to do it. Being an artist, a passion of mine, I just had to create. So it was like I was always doing something. And, a lot of it was, giving it away to different organizations to collect money and stuff for the auctions and different things, auction items and things. So, yes.
Thank you, Tom. That is great. There is something which is a very important question to all of us right now, and I will answer it first, and then Tom, you can chime in also. How people ask, how does the work play a role in our artsy work in reflecting the current social and political issues? I must acknowledge that we learn every day. We both are firm believers in equal opportunity, in inclusivity, diversity, and that we live in a wonderful, eclectic, and embracing community. One thing that I was very proud of right after the Lloyd incident in Minneapolis was that I was part of the committee, the task force that was created to help do the inclusivity, diversity, equality, and accessibility, the idea foundation that the DC Commission on Arts and Humanities has now. It is, and it still will be a highly needed item that we have in our agendas in now and in the future. I am a minority in a couple of different ways. I'm Latino, I'm a gay man, so I have seen it, and I have seen the struggles of people in Hispanic theater, like Gala Hispanic Theater, in series. Many amazing, strong women that started groups like the Dance Place. So I do believe that the talks need to continue. I am glad to see that through the Black Lives Matter movement, we have become more aware. There is more inclusion. There is, for minorities, maybe Asian Pacific Islander, African American, Latino, we all have a bigger seat at the table. There are more playwrights, there are more directors, there are more actors. I always found Washington very welcoming, but I think with the Black Lives Matter movement and all the leadership that we have in this town, especially surviving the COVID-19 pandemic, I think we tried coming together in creative ways to be able to survive. And I think that that is so very important, that we get all involved and bring people, be inclusive, start conversations, stand for your rights. So I thank all the leadership and the wonderful people who are making this possible, and we're proud to be part of it. Tom, what would be your opinion of the diversity and eclectic nature of our city?
Well, I always look at the glass half full instead of half empty, and just enjoy Muriel Bowser, Mayor Muriel Bowser, for all the work that she does in the Commission on the Arts and during the pandemic, and currently for what she's doing with the pandemic, and getting us shots and all this and that, everything that's going on in the area, in the arts, supporting the arts.
And we need to also mention, which is something I became very familiar, because we helped work with both director Angie M. Gates and also the mayor when they created 202. It is 202 Creates, and it's a wonderful and amazing forum, agency, office, an amazing dedicated team that help support the diverse arts in Washington, D.C., not only from a painter or a musician or the work that a theater or a venue does. It is also helps business people, helps people in the fashion industry, helps people in the culinary, in the jewelry making. So the effort, the money, the dedication, the honor that the mayor has given all of us through 202 Creates. And I have to give a shout to Director Angie M. Gates for the Office of Cable, Television, Film, Music, and Entertainment. Because when that office was created, she took over. There is support for everyone. And this city has a vast, an incredible fountain of talent. And it needs to be nurtured, it needs to be supported. We are the cradle, we're the city where go-go started. There's so many musical forms in this town, and so many events that happen. So thank you. And for the big team behind the mayor and the DC Commission on Arts and Humanities, the Commission on Humanities, the DC Commission on Fashion and events, for all they do. So I thank you. Now, Tom, I do have a question. As an artist, are there any current art world trends that you're following or that interest you?
I love the street and outdoor art. So just walking around the city and enjoying the city and taking it in. That's my more visual than anything. And being at my age and retired, I'm not very good on the computer sometimes. So if it isn't on YouTube or Facebook, I will walk around and enjoy the architecture, the street art, and outdoor art.
That is very important, that we have all of those new elements coming up and art trends that are communicated in a heartbeat. Something can be happening like with protest art, which I think is important that the Smithsonian is collecting it. One thing that, like I said before, that I have been so impressed and grateful was because of the pandemic, that we saw many big theaters and small theaters or small art organizations joining forces to be able to survive the pandemic, and bring what is called virtual art. In other words, virtual events, Zoom events, like that. Everybody got to be able to have that joy to be able to see art happening. I am totally impressed and taken by 3D graphic design because it's magical. There's so much to do. And I love how people are combining art forms. DJ Snoopy, for example, combining dance, digital video, spoken word, music, and then visual arts. So I think there is just an amazing involvement in what's coming up in the art world. Now, I do have a question for you. What would be your advice to the younger generation of artists, aspiring, up and coming, or people who are afraid to get involved in the art world? What would be your advice as an accomplished artist that you are?
Just do it. And if you find somebody that most artists you're going to find, if you really like their work or something, or you're fascinated with the techniques and stuff that they're doing, they're not going to feed you out on every technique that they do. But a lot of times they're willing to share their skills with you, no matter what it is. I mean, that's how I got started. That's how I know so many things, from basket weaving to antique stripping furniture to watercolors. I could never do watercolors and had the patience for that. But after doing watercolor, after taking some watercolor classes and learning it, it's like, whoa, you look at you watercolor altogether differently. You start looking at alcohol ink, the bright colors and stuff like that. But how they can control that is just totally mind-boggling. But I just and do it. I mean, do it. I started out as a kid. I was always making Christmas tree ornaments or Christmas presents, and I never stopped. I mean, when I got out, years ago, friends of mine said, well, why don't you make us things anymore instead of buying something or take us to dinner? It's like, so now that I've got my studio now, the pandemic did make me finish a studio in the garage. That was the plus of the pandemic for me. I now actually I've talked about it, but the pandemic forced me to finish the garage into a studio. So yes, I'm going to be creating more.
I am so thrilled, and God knows I live with all your creativity every day, and it's just a wonder that we see. And I thank you publicly for always being so supportive of my artsy adventures, going to events, being patient while I am talking to people, connecting people, and you also helping me help other people that are also your fans, because you're so helpful in donating and gifting of your time. So I thank you very much for that. Let me ask you something. If you had not been this multidisciplinary artist, I don't know what is left. What would have been one career quickly that you would have wanted to go after?
I have to say there isn't anything. I mean, if I wanted to do it, I just did it. And it's like, even with the books and stuff, it's like, probably the next thing I see on Pinterest is what I'm going to want to do. So it's like, save me from destroying my studio and starting all over again. But it's like, if I see an idea that I want to do, it's always going to be create something. And what about you? What would you like to do?
Actually, Tom, that's funny. Actually, growing around opera music and dancing, and my mother is a big fan of the movies. I actually, to be honest, I wish I had been an opera singer or a singer that can sing many different types of music, and maybe an actor and and a dancer, Broadway, Hollywood. But sadly, I never followed that career. So indeed, you are lucky that you have done and lived all those artful life that you have lived. So I think that that's great. So now, dear friends, thank you for joining us and sharing with us this 202 Creates Masterclass. We have enjoyed our time with you.
We're so very lucky to have been supported by the DC Mayor, Muriel Bowser, and 202 Creates, and their support for all the other arts in the community.
From Tom and I, please remain creative, remain involved, follow your dreams, and be the arts person or the artsy fellow or lady that you want to be. This is a wonderful world. It's inclusive. We all live in the best city in the world. We have tons of museums that are free. We have lots of wonderful parks, memorials, tourist places. We have theaters of all kinds. I'm always in awe, from Theater Alliance Restoration Theater to Arena to the Shakespeare Theater, and then the amazing historical National Theater, one of our favorites, and the Ford Theater, Gala Hispanic. In-Series does amazing work with opera, accessible to the public. We have dance plays. There is so much to offer. And this city, Washington, D.C., has the best schools for art education and theater. So join us, be part of the artsy and cultural and humanitarian world that Washington, D.C. is. We love Washington, and we thank our mayor, and we thank you all for being with us.
Thank you.